Coming up next, we have the cannabis wizard that is doing his damnedest to continue the work of the merry pranksters in the Brotherhood of Eternal Love. That's right. He's a cannabis wizard and a fellow Emerald Cup flower judge. That's right. It is the Count, the immortal Count himself, Mathieu Saint Germain.
Thank you so much, Brother Jason. Happy Monday. I've got a story that I'm going to kind of summarize because Jason forwarded to me. It's a great story that really highlights something that I've been mentioning and I think we should talk about. But the article's like just soaked in reefer madness and a ton of bullshit. So I'm going to kind of summarize and add a little bit. So the title is Her Brain Was Gone. Parents describe the horror of their daughter's marijuana-induced psychosis, which isn't a joke, man. Mental illness does suck. So Democrats in Minnesota are getting close to finally legalizing recreational marijuana and kind of catching up to the time, right? Now, one of the first things this article wants to say is marijuana is addictive. It's not. But at the same time, anything can be addictive if you've got problems, right? Gambling can be addictive. Sports can be addictive. Sex can be addictive, etc. So what they are talking about, though, is this family, this very nice family, had a daughter who went schizophrenic, and they're highlighting the ties of marijuana to schizophrenia and psychosis. Now, this is a real thing, and us as cannabis navigators, we should be really honest with this, and we shouldn't always try to, although cannabis can be the healing of the nations, it can help people with epilepsy, it can help people with cancer, it can help people with all kinds of problems. It can be a problem if you have mental illness in your family, right? And so this is a story about, a family whose daughter went supposedly psychotic. But one of the things you see is these are hardcore Christian fundamentalist parents. And one of the main warning signs was the daughter didn't want to take place in the usual American dog and pony show and go to the mall and drink Starbucks and blindly, Sieg Heil the U.S. military. And she started dyeing her hair and piercing herself. And so to the parents, that was deeply disturbing. And one of the things I'd offer is a lot of times what looks like psychosis or schizophrenia amongst youth who contact psychedelics is a radical breaking with a system that's not based on truth. It's based on sexual suppression and shame and social control. And when you have messages arising spontaneously from the center of your being that contradict this, you get into a mental crisis, because every authority figure you've ever talked to tells you the world's one way, but you're getting a conscious knowing from the center of the universe, from the center of your soul, that's telling you that none of this is real. It's all different. And there's a different way we're supposed to be ordering and running our society. And so I would offer that first and foremost, what often appears as mental breaks just is a cognitive dissonance of the inability to patch together these contradictory facts and worldviews. So again, that being said, there's a thought that there could be a link from THC to schizophrenia, but there also could be what's called a reverse causal mechanism, which is people are predisposed to trauma, psychosis, and schizophrenia self-medicating with cannabis because they are in crisis and they are not being helped by the medical authorities and the people around them, right? So another one of the things this thing wants to say is like, oh, weed is so strong now that it's making everybody crazy. Yo, dude, sadhus in India have been smoking hash for fucking 5,000 years plus. And even the most rudimentary hand-rubbed hash is over 40-50% THC, well higher than any cannabis flower that's ever been grown anywhere in the world, right? So that's just straight up bullshit. So when you hear that weed nowadays is worse than ever, that's not true either. Okay. In 2021, an estimated 30% of high school seniors reported using marijuana in the last year, an estimated 17% of 10th graders and 7% of 8th graders. Now, if we wanted to contrast this with Portugal or Amsterdam, where cannabis has been decriminalized or legal for decades, they're in the very low double digits of teen and young adult usage of drugs because of education and taking away that illicit, rebel connotation to the use of these substances, pardon me. There was a study that came out of the Lancet in Denmark that found the proportion of cases of schizophrenia associated with cannabis use disorder has tripled over the last 2 decades. Makes sense because so many more people are using cannabis. In 2019, the Lancet published the results of a large study from across Europe and Brazil that found heavy users of high-potency marijuana were up to 5 times more likely to develop a psychotic disorder than non-users. And I've seen it myself. So the number one thing is we need more education, and we need the message that if you have predilection to schizophrenia or other mental disorders, you really should seek therapy and think more than twice, think 3 or 4 times before using any substance to medicate or to do anything other than deal with your problems head on, right? Separately, I found a study. Let me hit it right here. I found a study from the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, and it's talking about the relationship between schizophrenia, THC, and CBD. And what they're saying is the same thing. There is a worry and a risk of developing early onset schizophrenia. And again, oftentimes it's early onset schizophrenia, which means you may actually have gone schizophrenic in your later 20s, but it's going to surface earlier, right? But there is a correlation between THC use and early onset schizophrenia. However, conversely, there's a correlation between CBD use and the cessation of schizophrenic tendencies or manifestations, as well as psychosis. So the jury's really still out, but at the same time, anything that's highly psychoactive is going to interface with your mental state. And if your mental state isn't stable, you have any kind of predilections towards mental illness, this could be a trigger. And so I think the number one thing the study points to, first and foremost, is we need real education and real information about cannabis use and the risks inherent as well as the benefits. And I think stories like the one, I'd like anybody who wants to please read this story, contrast the story with what I've been offering. And I think stories like this do a disservice to even the thing that they're trying to do, because when you say that the weed's stronger than ever and it's going to turn you into a psychotic monster, and then you have a 10th grader smoke weed and he just like hears a bird call and it's the most beautiful thing ever, and he sees an oak tree and he sees how the unfolding fractal reality of an oak tree mirrors the neurons in his brain and the bronchi and the alveoli in his lungs, and he's turned on to the fractal nature and the self-similar nature of the entire universe. It's kind of hard to tell him it's the most evil thing ever. But if you were to tell him that this is a powerful curative but also psychoactive herb that can have risks, and he should talk to his parents about if there's mental illness in the family, and find ways to use this in a way with maybe mentorship again, and or approval of parental figures, then you're giving people reality and they can make an actual decision that can better inform their own health and how they navigate in the world. So this is Saint Germain for High Night News with a edited on the spot article, and I would love to hear you guys all your. And I hope everybody out there has a happy Monday.